Welcome in, everybody. You are listening to the Authority Podcast here on the B Podcast Network. If you're a regular listener, thanks as always for being with us. If you're new to the show, really appreciate you being here. If you're finding it on any platform, you can also head to authoritypodcast.net to find it wherever you prefer. Without further ado, let's get into today's conversation. My guest is Sahil Bloom. He is an inspirational writer and content creator, captivating millions of people every week through his insights in his bi-weekly newsletter, which is called the Curiosity Chronicle. He is a successful entrepreneur, owner of SRB Holdings, and the managing partner of SRB Ventures, which is an early-stage investment fund. Sahil graduated from Stanford University with an MA in public policy, BA in economics and sociology, was a four-year member of the Stanford Baseball Team, and he has a new book called The 5 Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. That's what we're talking about today. Sounds like a good topic, doesn't it? Let's get into it. Sahil, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I wanted to start out by talking a lot about curiosity. I referenced the name of your newsletter. I think that's kind of the journey that you started on here that led to eventually realizing there was a book there, right? What is curiosity to you? And if I dare put these two questions together, I mean, what is it not? I mean, what do people think curiosity is that you might disagree with?
That's interesting. Yeah, my entire journey, I would say, to this was started by what is still in my bio on my Twitter profile, which was where I started all the writing, which just says exploring my curiosity and sharing what I learn along the way. Curiosity is the willingness to explore. It's the both ability and willingness to explore the world around you. It's something that's hardwired into our brains and into our biology. It's how we learn about the world around us. And so you have a young child, I do as well.
Mhm.
Watching them is a course in curiosity. The way that they actually look around, observe things, learn about them, learn what hurts, learn what's beneficial, learn what tastes good, learn what tastes bad. All of those things are the natural human instinct towards curiosity. Unfortunately, as you get older, that natural instinct starts to atrophy and wither. And we live in a world where in adulthood, curiosity is generally frowned upon. The pursuit of kind of new, interesting things, going down new rabbit holes. People say stay in your lane, right? People are like, oh, just focus on your thing. Don't worry about those other things out there. Don't pursue those curiosities. Part of that is like an evolutionary survival instinct, right? When you're young, it benefits you to be curious so that you can learn about the world and understand it. When you're older, at least in the wild, it might have gotten you eaten by a lion if you got interested in like what was in that brush over there making a sound and you got curious and you went over, you might have gotten eaten. So maybe there's a little bit of survival instinct there. But in a world where few of us have to worry about being eaten by a lion if we go explore some new thing, the loss of curiosity over time is a very unfortunate thing because curiosity is what keeps us young. It's what allows us to learn and continue to grow over the course of our lives. And it's what allows us to answer some of the most challenging questions that we have to wrestle with, these universal questions that we all have about our lives.
I love that part of your definition was included the word willingness. And I think because there needs to be a willingness to learn what you learn, to go where the information takes you. And as you reference, maybe it's a factor of adulthood, maybe it's a societal thing. It's certainly elements of this in American society, although not exclusively, around anti-curiosity, anti-knowledge, anti-intellectualism, that if we're seeking out information, it might be exclusively to confirm what we think or to prove a point versus to say, actually, you know what? I don't know that much about this, or I don't understand why somebody else thinks something different. Let me really try to learn about that and see what I find out. And I think there's something there about like the reader of the book, which we'll get into, and even the reader of your newsletter, the audience is broad at this point, but there's some self-selection. And there's some people out there that if we could reach them and kind of like, how would you make the case that being curious about new ideas is objectively good, right? That just having a disposition toward curiosity, toward trying to learn new things, trying to learn a diverse variety of things, right? In different disciplines, things that are outside of our natural experience. How would you best explain that to someone who may not believe that curiosity is necessarily a good thing or would serve them, or that it's, yeah, that it's it has utility?
I mean, fundamentally, curiosity is what allows you to improve. It's what allows you to grow. If your life is currently perfect, 10 out of 10 every single day, I don't think you need to be particularly curious. You should just focus on maintaining your current state. But I don't know anyone in the world that would say that they're at a 10 out of 10 every single day. And so there are always areas that you can improve, that you can learn more about, that you can question, that you can ask new questions to chip away at the assumptions you presently have, that you can improve at the things you're currently doing. And that comes through curiosity. That comes through asking the questions about why you're doing it a certain way. Maybe you could do it slightly differently. It's like the idea of a professional athlete who constantly reinvents themselves. They're already at the top of their craft, they're already making a whole lot of money, but they're constantly thinking about ways that they can improve their game or that they can better leverage their unique skills as they get older and older.
Mhm.
Maybe they no longer have in tennis, maybe they no longer have the powerful serve that they had when they were younger. Tiger Woods as a golfer is a great example. He no longer had the extraordinary power that he had when he was young. So he needed to adapt his game. He needed to be curious and ask questions about the ways that he could adapt certain facets of his game to continue to improve over the long run, to continue to execute at a higher and higher level. That is curiosity. That is how you do it. It's by asking those questions, it's by looking at the things that you otherwise wouldn't have looked at.
How did you start to become curious? I mean, has this been a lifelong thing? Is it something you intentionally committed to at a certain point?
I would say it's to some extent hardwired in my DNA beyond what is hardwired in a normal person's. The reason I say that is because I think that the questioning and rejection of common convention is something that was passed down to me by my parents, who made a very deliberate decision when they chose each other to question common convention. My mom grew up born and raised in Bangalore, India. She came over to the United States for college against her parents' wishes. And my father is a white Jewish guy from the Bronx, New York. The two of them had no business meeting or being together. And they crossed over for a 2-week period at Princeton University, where my dad was finishing his dissertation and my mom was going to be doing her master's program. She was working in the library to pay her way through, was about to start school. And they had a 2-week window where they crossed over at that place. And they went on a date and they fell in love. And when they wanted to get married, my dad's family did not accept it for a variety of reasons, told him that he had to choose between her or them. And he walked out the door and chose love. And that rejection of the cultural default setting of the common convention is something that was passed down to my sister and I through that daily decision that they made to choose love. And 40 plus years later, they're still a role model for an incredible marriage that we both have to look at. But I feel like in many ways, I was raised in this world and in this household where that questioning, that curiosity was part of the DNA of our house. And I was encouraged to do that. I was encouraged to ask questions about things, to do things differently if I felt it didn't make sense. And not everyone has the joy of growing up in a house like that. So I do feel like I learned it from a young age because of the DNA of that household from what my parents' original decision was.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good origin for it, right? And I think certainly that I don't have any data on this, but I feel like I would be willing to wager that most people who had to learn how to make something work the hard way, whether it's a relationship or whatever, have more success sticking with it because of having had to go through the friction. I talk a lot about like things that are frictionless in conversations I have here on the show and things with marketing, stuff like that around, okay, we're talking about the affirmative case for X. Let's make sure we also introduce a little bit of either why that's challenging or easier said than done, or what the status quo of the alternative is, and like not make this conversation too frictionless, because then it's just slippery. Like it sounds good in the moment and then it goes away. And, I also think that applies to what you were talking about, to say like if I had to investigate like what love really is, what does it mean to be in a committed relationship, what does it mean to make our own decisions around our values versus just adhering to convention and doing what maybe is easy or has fewer headaches. Same thing with learning anything, right, via curiosity, that if you truly are curious, you're going to come against some ideas that make you uncomfortable, that at first you're maybe even repulsed by, and then eventually you start to see, all right, I kind of understand this. Doesn't mean you necessarily come to agree or disagree, but you just have a much deeper understanding because of that friction that existed, and appreciating the labor of having had to be accountable, I think, for your own exploration, your own decisions, saying like, if I'm choosing this path, it's my job to make sure it works. And I mean, you can tell me whether or not you recognize that in your parents' marriage specifically, but when people make a decision to say, this is our choice, this is what we decided, and nobody's going to make it work except for us, right? And if it doesn't work, it's because we didn't make it work. It certainly relates to how I think about things in my own life as well.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a certain accountability that comes with it for sure. And I mean, accountability and that ownership that you're referring to, that recognition that no one's coming to save you around these
Mm-hmm.
decisions that you're making is at the center of everything that we're talking about. When you're talking about building the life that you want, ownership over that life is a foundational principle there. If you're not willing to take ownership, if you're not willing to assume control and assume that you have the power to take action that creates outcomes, that creates change, then you're not going to be making progress in any of these areas. And frankly, a pushback that anyone has against the entire like self-help category of books or content is fundamentally that. It's this feeling of hopelessness. It's a feeling of powerlessness, that this person is telling me that I can take an action and that I can do this to change this. And I don't feel that I have that power to do that. So you perceive it as snake oil, which, look, I totally understand that self help as a category is not for everybody. If you don't feel like you have the power to create, to do something and to create a change in your life, then it makes no sense to consume that type of content because you don't feel that you can actually take those actions to go and create that change. I know that that's not true. You absolutely can, and there's tiny little proof points that you can create that will shift your mindset around that, but that's a fundamental reality.
And not to get too far afield here, but it is making me think of something, and you might have had similar experiences, as we're both men, we're both around similar age, that certainly I've experienced with a lot of my peers and friends, men in particular, right, that have that fear of commitment when it comes to marriage and things. And the way I always say it to people is, it's because you think that when you go up to the altar and you say, I do, that's the last time you're making that
Mm,
decision. I say it's the first time. And then you continue to make that decision every day afterward. Like you think that whatever happens after that is just whatever happens to you, versus you saying, like, it's your job to make it a great decision and make it a
yep.
great marriage and to continue committing to it. And part of that is continuing to learn more about your spouse, more about yourself. When people say, oh, well, I'm worried that my spouse is going to change. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm worried if they wouldn't. I'm worried if you wouldn't too. But, you should be learning more about yourself, more about that person, more about the people around you. If you have kids, you learn a lot of things that you did not know, and a lot of things that you thought that were wrong, right? And if you are committed to that, the sky's the limit. If you just think, well, the job of my partner is to serve me and make me happy, and if I'm not happy, it's because of something that somebody else is doing, then yes, I think you'll be unhappy. That's a
Yeah,
whole other
Viktor
thing.
Frank said that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And your power is in your ability to choose your response within that space. It's your ability to actually assume and recognize that space that does exist and your ability
Mm-hmm.
to influence the path there, the path forward, that is so, so important. And I mean, I often think like when I encounter young people or anyone for that matter that is feeling lost in their journey, that's feeling that feeling of powerlessness or hopelessness, what are the small ways that you can recognize and reassume your power? And the power is just simply the recognition that you can take an action and that it can create an outcome in your life, and that you have the power over that outcome through something that you did. It's why I talk about health and physical health so much. It's why that's one of the types of wealth that I cover in the book, because the ability to influence an outcome is so direct. If you are overweight and you're not happy with your current place in life, you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, and you wake up every single day for a month and go to the gym, even for like 20, 30 minutes, just for a
Mhm.
month, do that, you will like lose a couple notches on your belt. And at the end of the month, you will feel like a completely different human. And that has ripple effects into every other area of life. You haven't actually changed your professional setting. You haven't changed your relationships. You haven't changed anything. What you have done is that you've reassumed the power in your life that you can take an action that creates an outcome in your world. And that has ripple effects into all of those other areas.
Yeah. So you talked to a lot of people when you were working on writing this book, a lot of conversations, interviews. I think just hearing their experiences. What impresses you about somebody when you meet them?
Ooh, I would say a clarity and self-awareness about who they are and their both strengths and weaknesses as a human is the most impressive thing. Because self-awareness is actually a very rare trait in humans. In a lot of ways, it's one that has been squeezed out of us. You know, like we are sort of designed in some ways to protect our egos, and so a lot of people will inflate themselves because
Mhm.
they don't want to admit their flaws. We protect the ego, protect the strength of that ego. And that gets you into trouble in a lot of ways in life when you're not self aware. And so the clarity and the ability to be vulnerable and self aware about deficiencies is rare and immediately impressive when you interact with someone. When you can tell that they've done the inner work, that they've had the introspection, that they've gone through those periods of wrestling with themselves to understand what they are great at and also to understand their deficiencies and what they need to work at or what they're going to avoid putting into conflict with things. That is a fascinating trait to me. And one that I would say I've observed in most of the highest performers in whatever field
Yeah.
that I happen to have interacted with.
Other than just the opposite of that, what disappoints you? I mean, without, I mean, maybe something specific comes to mind, but without necessarily giving identifying information. I mean, when there's somebody who from the outside you're really interested to get to know, and then there's certain
Yeah.
things that you say, ah, man, that's disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing worse about someone than a person that speaks badly about other people. I think that says so much about a person's confidence in themselves when they act that way. I think braggadocio, like people that feel the need to inflate themselves, is a very telling sign about their own insecurities, typically. You know, people who are crushing it in life very rarely feel the need to tell you that they are crushing it. They just don't, because they are, and you know it and they know it, and it doesn't need to be said. Generally speaking, if someone brags about their wealth or income or success, you can assume that it's like half of what they're saying, because the real people that are crushing it don't say it. Those are definitely two that jump out to me. You know, the last one I would say is just like people that seem to believe that they are a static entity really disappoints me. Like when someone uses phrases like that's just the way I am, or you know, that I was just born that way, or
Hmm.
this is how it is. Things like that really bother me. Not about the person necessarily, but it makes me sad that they think that, because in my experience it's so untrue. We are so capable of change and growth and dynamism that having that mindset and having that perspective around your own life, it's a sad thing to me.
Yeah, that's reminding me of, I guess, curiosity in another form. And one of the things that just in the professional world can be of great service or disappointing is the willingness of people to reward another's willingness to go outside of their comfort zone, to be
Mm,
curious, to seek feedback. I always think of a couple of experiences, but one in particular, very early in my career, recently out of grad school, only had a little experience, and I had interviewed for a job and I didn't get it. And I reached back out and asked if they'd be willing to share any feedback. And the CEO of the company was willing to get on the phone with me and talk through it. And gave me some great advice. And what you said that kind of reminded me of it was they had asked me about my previous experience, and it was a really toxic culture and really bad. And I gave an honest answer. And he said, you really want to avoid saying negative things about a previous employer, even if it's true. And I learned that, and I remember it many, many years later. But I wouldn't have ever learned that if I didn't reach out to them and say, would you be willing to give me feedback on this interview and maybe hear some things that are going to hurt, right? And if he hadn't been willing to give it. And a lot of people will come up with all kinds of reasons not to do that. But think about that. That was somebody I met one time, however many years ago. And that is still serving me all these years later. And it's something I can pass along to others. So I'll always appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Amen.
let's talk about these 5 types of wealth. So time, social, mental, physical, financial. And we won't get into detail about all of them, but if you'd like to kind of summarize them, but I'd also really be interested in your perspective on finding the balance and understanding how each of them, right, is optimized at different times of life. Each of
Yeah.
them are kind of, how can we, I guess, in essence, attend to all 5 once we have an understanding that there are all these different types and it's not just financial.
Yeah, so I'll walk through them and then we can chat through some of those bigger picture questions. So time wealth is all about who you spend your time with, how you spend it, your control over that time, your awareness of the fleeting nature of your time. It's all of those things. Social wealth is about your connections to the people around you, both the breadth and the depth of those connections. Mental wealth is about purpose, it's about growth, it's about your curiosity, it's about creating that space between stimulus and response so that you can actually think, whether through spirituality, meditation, prayer, walking, whatever it is, it's creating space in your world. Physical wealth is all about your health and vitality. It's controlling the controllables in order to build a healthy, vital life. And then financial wealth is what we know, it's money. But importantly, in the context of this book, the way that I confront the problem around it is related to this idea of enough. What does enough and what does your enough life look like to you? And managing the expectations around your life being a really important piece, because expectations are your greatest financial liability. If your expectations are growing faster than your assets, you will never feel rich. You will never experience that feeling of contentment or joy or satisfaction. So those are the 5. The point and the whole thesis is that everyone has always told you that money can't buy you happiness. But no one ever talks about what you should be thinking about accumulating and building instead. What are the things that matter? What are the things you should be measuring over the course of your life alongside money? The book is not arguing that money doesn't matter. Very far from it, actually. Money does matter, and it is an important thing in all of our lives, but it can't be the only thing. Because at the end of the day, your wealthy life may involve money, but it will be defined by everything else, all of these other types of wealth. So finding your personal points of balance across the different seasons of your life is what the book is enabling you to do. It's what the framework and what the blueprints and the guides in the book are allowing you to do. I say seasons, which is a very, very important concept when it comes to this book. Your life has seasons, periods of time where you are going to be naturally prioritizing and focusing on 1 or 2 of the 5 types of wealth. You cannot hope to have all 5 in perfect balance at the optimal level in every single season of your life. It's unrealistic. When you're in your 20s and early 30s, you may be in a financial wealth focused season. You're trying to build a financial stable foundation for the rest of your life. That means you're going to be really focused on financial wealth. The point that the book is getting at is that you don't want to allow all of the other types of wealth to simply be turned off, to not think about them as you go through this season that is going to naturally be more focused on one. You want them to all exist on a dimmer switch. So you want to be able to still do small investments in these other areas of your wealth while you may be focused on one. And what happens over the course of the different seasons is that main point of focus will change. If in your 20s and 30s you're focused on financial wealth building, it might be that in your 30s and 40s you have young children and you want to put the financial side sort of on autopilot and be in an okay enough position, but really focus on your social wealth, on your connection with your children, or on your mental wealth, on finding that purpose and growth in your life. Maybe on your physical wealth, on making sure you stay with your health. Whatever it is, it's defining what the priorities are during a specific season and then identifying the core high leverage ways to continue to maintain and foster those other areas of your life over the years.
Yeah. Do you have any, I guess, framework, for lack of a better word, although it doesn't have to be that formal, but for following, like how to prioritize when there is a direct conflict between a couple of them, and you know that you can really only prioritize one or the other at a given moment. And it could be for one day, right? It doesn't need to be for an entire season of life, but to be able to make that calculation and that decision about this is what I should prioritize in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, knowing so the awareness around what your primary focus is the most important thing within any one season. What is your primary focus that you're trying to drive towards? Across the other areas, the important point is knowing what is the tiny action I can take today that compounds positively in that other area of my life. Because what we think as ambitious people is that we need to do a whole lot in order to progress something. I think that in order to progress my health, I need to work out for an hour a day. Or I think that in order to progress my relationships, I need to say yes to every wedding, every event, every coffee chat, every date, all of those things. The reality is far different. You can progress your relationships incredibly well by simply sending a text message to someone when you're thinking about them. Just saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. You can progress your health really well by just going for a 15-minute walk or a 30-minute walk on a daily basis. So, remembering that, remembering those tiny little actions that you can take, even on those days when it's really hard, even on those days when you do need to be head down in the work doing the thing, is the important piece. I come into tension around this every single day. I'm in a season of my life where I'm really focusing on pushing out these ideas into the world, creating these positive ripples in the world with this book,
Mm-hmm.
with any of the content I'm creating. That comes into conflict with my depth and my desire for a deep, connected relationship with my wife and son. I have a 2.5 year old son. What that means to me is that I need to make sure that I do the very high leverage thing to be present with them. So that at the end of the day, when I go leave out of here, I need to make sure that I leave my phone, that I'm completely shut off, and that I'm entirely present with them. Because I may only have 30 minutes or 60 minutes today when I can truly be present, when I can give them my energy during that window. And if I allow these other things to bleed out into that, that's going to be zero. I'm not going to have been there and I'm not going to feel that connection. But the 30 to 60 minutes of truly present energy is extremely powerful if I allow it to be. So what would have been in conflict, what would have been in tension, I'm now taking and turning into an actual positive. I'm taking it and finding a high leverage way to continue to build that thing forward, despite being in a period of my life when I'm inherently sort of unbalanced with this one primary focus.
The time wealth stands out to me as unique among them, as it's the only one that's truly finite. Physical in some ways is finite, although you can improve your physical health, right? Time, you basically you have a certain amount in your account when you start. You don't even really know how much it is. You're given an
Mhm.
allowance every day, and eventually one day you don't get any more, right? You know, what are your recommendations and
Yeah.
for how we should think about time and just understanding, like you just said in micro, right? How to say, okay, I have this much time today to do this thing that's important to me. Let me make sure I'm fully present. Overall, think about that and say, look, this is something that, I mean, you need to be attentive to, because the second you are not, it slips away fast.
Yeah, so I'll push back on one thing there, which is that time is entirely set in stone and fixed. And the reason I'll push back on it is for a slight nuance. You have a certain amount of time, yes, in a kind of linear chronological sense. The ancient Greeks had two words for time. They had chronos, which was the kind of chronological nature of time, and then they
Mhm.
had kairos, which was the sort of qualitative nature of time. The idea that certain moments have different texture, they have different meaning or import. And that is true for your life. You have a certain amount of chronological time, but you can bend the curve on the amount of time you actually have with the people you care about doing the things that you care about. A perfect example from my life. My wife and I lived across the country on the West Coast. My
Mhm.
parents and her parents lived on the East Coast. There was a point in time where I saw my parents once a year. And the big change in my life came after a friend confronted me with the idea that I was seeing my parents once a year. They were mid 60s, and I was going to see them 15 more times before they died. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And we made a change. We decided to sell our house and move back to the East Coast to live closer to our families, where we've ultimately had kids and built this whole life. I now see my parents at least once a week. And so I went from having 15 more times with my parents to
Mhm.
hundreds. And that is quite literally creating time with my parents, creating time with the people that you care about most. So out of thin air, you've literally just manufactured time to do the things you want or be with the people you want. And that is through your action. You have power to actually take actions that change that kairos time. It changes the amount of time you have doing the things you want, spending it with the people that you want. And so that is a really important point that comes across in the book loud and clear. It's you have control over certain things as it relates to time. You don't have control over when you die. You don't have control over the amount of chronological time you have, although you can do things to hopefully extend it a little bit longer. But you definitely do have time over how, do have control over how you are spending it with the people who you're spending it with, the things, the activities, the energy you're getting out of those things along the way.
What has fatherhood taught you about time?
Oof. I would say the most powerful lesson I've learned is that there are specific windows of time, much shorter than we care to admit, during which certain people occupy our lives. And if you blink, those moments will disappear and you will never get them back. And I am smack dab in the middle of one of the most important ones of those, which is that window of time that you get with your children. I think the statistic is that you've spent like 95% of the time you're going to spend with your children by the time they're 18 and they leave your house. And the bulk of that, even more impactful time, comes before the age of 10, when you are truly the most important person in their world. And if you blink, if you spend that entire time hustling, chasing whatever more, whatever goal, whatever ambition, it's going to be gone. And your kid is never going to be 5 years old again, 7 years old again, 10 years old again. And you're never going to occupy that same place in their world. And so it's one of the things I share most about on social media and my newsletter in the book. It's just this idea that the days are long, but the years are short. And we really need to find ourselves and connect with ourselves during those days so that we don't allow those years to pass us by.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that. I have to I mean, I haven't learned the answer to this yet whatsoever. But when and how to determine when there's times that the other types of well, or the other ways, that you provide and are a good parent to your child, when to prioritize them versus spending time. Because I never want to do anything else other than spend time with my son. However,
Yeah,
if
and I
all
think
we
the
ever
way
did
you,
was spend time together,
yeah,
then it would be hard to make an income and do other
yeah.
things. And not everybody has a different experience of it, but I certainly have found that it's like, okay, how do you wait? And there's no perfect way to do it, and there's no right answer. Like the different ways that you bring value to someone's life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the important piece with parenthood in particular, that at least the way I've wrestled with it is very important for your children to see you working hard on things that you care about.
Mhm.
And that thing you care about is dynamic, right? It is very important for me, for my son, to see my wife and I working hard on our relationship, you know, for us navigating challenges of life, having hard conversations, loving each other, supporting each other. It's very important to me that my son sees that. It's very important to me that my son sees me doing hard things on a daily basis, pushing my body, challenging my mind, doing those kind of hard things and experiencing delayed gratification from them. It's very important to me that my son sees me working hard on the work that I care about and understands why I care about it, why it is meaningful, what it does for our family, what it does for the world, hopefully. Those lessons are necessary for him to live a great life. I learned those lessons from my father from observing him. They weren't taught to me. I learned them from seeing him and seeing how he engaged with the world. So when I work or when I have to travel, especially as my son gets older, I want him to understand why. And that is really where I'm going to center my effort is making sure he understands why I'm doing the things I'm doing when I'm not with him. Because if they understand the why, then they fill the kind of void with that why. If they
Mhm.
don't understand why, then you're just gone and they fill it with whatever the worst version is. Oh, my dad doesn't love me or my dad's not around a whole lot. If they understand the why, they fill the gap with that why. They understand that you're gone because you're working on X, or that you're gone because you care about providing for the family, or you're gone because of whatever that thing might be. That why is really the essential point there.
Yeah. So in working on this book, you talk to a lot of 80, 90-year-olds about their lives and about their reflections on what they learned about life. Is there anything that in particular really has continued to stand out and resonate? I'm sure there's plenty of things, but anything that sort of is standing out above the rest?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I they kind of fall into different areas. As it relates to this one 80-year-old man told me to treat your body like a house that you're going to have to live in for the next 70 years. And that was the advice that he would have given to his younger self because he hadn't done that and had really experienced the pain of it later in life. I love that analogy of the house. The idea that your body is your house. And so treat it that way. You have to make the investments, you have to make the minor repairs along the way because otherwise your house is not going to be in good shape when you're 70, 80, 90 years old. One older man gave me the advice to tell your partner you love them every single day because someday they'll be gone and you won't be able to. That obviously a very emotional point, but a really important one. And a reminder on a more micro level to just tell your people that you care about them along the way. One of the things that comes out in the book a lot is these tiny things that you can do every single day. You don't need to take extraordinary actions. You don't need to change the world every single day with all of your, growth in all of these different areas. You just need to do the little thing. The tiny little like 1 minute thing, the 2 minutes of journaling in the evening can dramatically improve your mental health. The 15-minute walk after lunch can really improve your physical health. Being slightly more aware of your energy can really improve your time and how you think about it. These little interventions can actually create a lot of value in your life if you let them.
Yeah. So somewhat of a pivot to a point on mental wealth, but our primary listenership here is in leadership roles in education. So I certainly think that there's a lot here for them to take in. But I'm interested in what's the most compelling thing you've learned about learning. All these various, I think, models, frameworks, and things. Is there one that you've really come back to time and again and really found that really powerful?
I would say the Feynman technique is probably the most powerful learning method I've come across. It's Richard Feynman, the American theoretical physicist, who had a reputation that his real genius was in his ability to convey complex topics using simple words. And the important point with this is that if you can't distill something down to its basics in simple form, you don't understand it well enough yet. And so the idea with the Feynman technique is that when you're learning something, you quickly try to teach it to someone else. And you'll know very quickly if you teach it to an uninitiated person, someone that doesn't understand the concept, where your knowledge on it has gaps. So if I go try to explain a new concept framework to my wife who doesn't understand that concept, I'll see in her face or in her questions where I wasn't explaining it clearly, where I was using jargon, where I was trying to, glaze over things, where I need to go deeper. And that gives you the information now to go and study more, to go dig deeper into those areas so that you can distill it and simplify it down for other people. I have just found time and time again that is the most powerful way to learn. It's just like very quickly default to teaching it. When I learn something new, one of the first things I try to do is explain it to someone. Like, hey, I learned this cool new thing. Let me talk to you about it. Blah blah
Yeah.
blah 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 blah. The person looks confused on some part, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't understand that well. Let me go learn more about it. And then I come back and try to iterate on it that way. I think that is a really really powerful one that a lot of young people can use.
What's something you've learned in this book writing process, right? Your research, your conversation that you didn't expect?
Ooh, the power of feedback for creating motivation. And this is sort of a macro point on the book writing process, but when you are doing almost anything professionally, whether it's creating content like writing and newsletters, social media, whatever, or if it's like an actual job, teaching, whatever, you're getting immediate feedback from people. And that feedback creates motivation to keep working and to do the thing. So you're seeing the kid learning. If you're a teacher, you're seeing the kid learning, you're seeing how they interact with it. And so you're getting feedback, you're getting information back that's encouraging you to continue working at your craft. When you're in the book writing process, you get none. You are writing alone for 3 years before anyone's going to have seen this book. I mean, I've been working on this since 2022. It's going to be 2025 when the book comes out. That makes it very challenging to daily motivate yourself to continue working on a thing when you're not getting that feedback and that dopamine from the feedback to keep you pushing forward. That is a really interesting challenge that needs to be solved when you're going through one of these long term projects that is necessarily happening in the dark.
What's something that you have changed your mind about
During the book writing process or in general?
in the process of learning lots of things?
You can't teach your kids anything. I, before my son was born, had this like long list of things I was going to teach him. And I was going to sit down and I was going to be like, this is important and these things matter and these things.
Hmm.
And I've come to believe that you really can't teach your kids anything. The best you can do is embody the things that you want them to learn. And then they need to figure it out for themselves.
What should I have asked you that I didn't?
I like that change your mind question. I would have said that actually, but you asked it.
I can tell other people that.
Yeah.
This is a great question that you never
Uh,
asked me. Awesome. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. Listeners, the book is called The Five Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. You want to tell our listeners all the places they can find you? Where can they find the book? How to connect?
Yeah, you can buy the book on Amazon or anywhere else books are sold. And you can also find it at the5typesofwealth.com. And then my name, Sahil Bloom. You can find me anywhere on any of the major platforms. Having a weird name, one of the benefits is it's pretty easy to find me.
Yeah, I've always certainly thought that my name was quite unorthodox, and I learned that there's some politician in Canada that has the same name.
That's
So
funny.
I unusually have to use my middle initial sometimes for accounts and things, which I'm like, really?
Funny.
Who has this name? But anyhow,
That's
yes,
awesome.
we'll put all the links below, everyone, to the social channels, the newsletter, and the book. Make it really easy for you. Check all of it out. It's really great to have this biweekly newsletter. If you're not totally sure, do I want the book or not? Read that. And if you think that's good, you probably will want the book. And I'll certainly say for myself, it's definitely worth checking out. It's something that I've been reading for the past few years. And I do think that I honestly probably tuned some of it out for a while because I think there was a proliferation of not necessarily directly, but copycatish type of content around. And at a certain point, I think a lot of people decided they were going to write. So then they had to figure out something to write about. And I think it led to a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily exploring ideas in a lot of detail or was just oversimplifying things. But there truly is so much to learn here, so many interesting lessons, frameworks, stories passed down over generations, just a lot of interesting ways to think about things. So check all of that out. And then if you enjoy it, check out the book as well, or check out the book today. But Sahil, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This episode was edited by Gage Sanderson.